Now, this was an article concerning Project 2025.
Let me ask you about Project 2025. So you've publicly said that you don't have any direct connection to Project
Nothing. I know nothing about it. And they know that too. Democrats know that. And I purposely haven't read it, but it doesn't mean anything because it has nothing to do with me. Project 25 has absolutely nothing to do with me.
And of course, Project 2025 has caused a lot of disturbance, many Adventists being concerned about it.
We begin tonight with a terrifying concept.
A frightening article.
They're calling it Project 2025.
Incredibly important reporting people need to pay attention to.
This plan that they want to put in place if the Republican Party wins the presidency upon the inauguration.
According to the New York Times, those plans include bringing independent agencies under direct presidential control.
It's kind of being pitched under the guise of dismantling the administrative state.
They say they would plan to do this with any Republican president.
It's about deregulation. It's about deconstructing the administrative state.
There's a network of conservative groups who are backing this effort, like the Heritage Foundation.
Take this very seriously. Don't think this is a joke.
It is incredibly alarming.
Frightening development.
You don't have to be a civics dork to know that you don't want that.
We've never seen anything like this in American history.
This article is from Liberty Magazine. It says in 1906, when Liberty Magazine was first published, every state in the Union, except for California, Idaho, that's where I am, and then territory of Arizona, had some form of Sunday blue law on the book. These were laws imposing criminal and other penalties for working on Sunday. So we got to hold on to that. These were laws imposing criminal and other penalties for working on Sunday. The Sabbath of America's Protestant majority, Jews, Seventh-day Adventists, Seventh-day Baptists, and other dissenters were regularly prosecuted, jailed, or fined for secular labor on Sunday. There's a stunning 1895 photo, for instance, taken in Rhea County, Tennessee, of 8 Sabbath breakers, in other words, Sunday breakers, in a chain gang with other convicted criminals. So when we look back at the days of Constantine, 321, the Sunday law of Constantine, the first Sunday law enacted by a civil government on behalf of the Roman Catholic Church, 321, there were penalties. And so when we understand the Sunday law and have a fear of the Sunday law, we understand there's going to be a time where there's penalties for breaking the Sunday Sabbath. And that's basically what we're seeing in this article, the concern about that. And then the article goes on. So back to today in Project 2025, other commentators have already pointed out to proposals in the document that would undermine both the spirit and letter of America's constitutional regime. But let me highlight just one. Tucked away on page 589 in the section focused on reforming the Department of Labor is a breathtaking proposal to use American laws to support religious doctrine. The section begins, God ordained the Sabbath, Sunday, as a day of rest. And until very recently, Judeo-Christian tradition sought to honor that mandate by moral and legal regulation of work on that day. So in other words, we can see a Sunday law in Project 2025. So again, there's that fear there. Now, if you do a search on Project 2025, much of the commentary that'll come up on it is obviously going to come from people on the left because Project 2025 is put together by conservatives. So much of what's in it's not going to be attractive to those who have more liberal ideas or more left-leaning ideas. But here is a reference to a Sunday law, and we already saw that the Sunday law of concern is a law that would persecute and penalize people for keeping Sunday, or breaking Sunday, for breaking Sunday. That's what we see historically, and that's what the concern about the Sunday law is. And so here we're looking at Project 2025 and Trump being in office and conservatives who support Trump, many who support Project 2020, well, I would say any who support Project 2025 are going to support Trump. And so this is a connection being made that people are concerned about. And you probably heard about this concern.
Oh yeah, it's yeah. I think I had to try to correct some of it. Yeah, I've had a few videos addressing what Project 2025 is, even the part that addresses the Sunday law, which I'm thinking you're going to read about that. But yeah, part of my argument was yes, it's there, but it's not. Trump never claimed it as his, you know, has his policy.
Sense I'm not an extremist at all. Like some on the right, severe right, came up with this Project 25, and I don't even know. I mean, some of them I know who they are, but they're very, very conservative, just like you have. They're sort of the opposite of the radical left, okay? You have the radical left and you have the radical right, and they come up with this, I don't know what the hell it is, it's Project 25. He's involved in Project, and then they read some of the things, and they are extreme. I mean, they're seriously extreme. But I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it. But what they do is misinformation and disinformation, and they keep saying, he's a threat to democracy. I'm saying, what the hell did I do for democracy? Last week, I took a bullet for democracy. What did I do against democracy? Crazy.
Because this is coming from the Heritage Foundation, yes, which is Roman Catholic. Yes, there's Kevin Roberts and a lot. So there's some elements of that we can say. Some of the people that were part of this document had worked in Trump presidency in 2016, but Trump himself has not claimed any ownership of this. But even if he had part of that, to say for certain that Trump is going to implement a Sunday law, we're still lacking some more evidence to make that claim, because how could one single man implement a Sunday law? You know, because just the way the Constitution is written. So it's going to definitely take a drastic change. This is why Ellen White says every principle of our Constitution has to be repudiated. It doesn't just happen. It has to happen under some serious consequences. So there has to be, again, goes back to what you were saying earlier, there has to be enough chaos to bring about such an order of a national Sunday law to supposedly fix it. So yeah, I don't quickly run with the same notion that I hear with Project 2025, although I do understand why people are making the argument. All I'm simply saying is it's lacking evidence to really sustain their claim.
Yeah, and if a person is more aligned with a left-leaning ideology, there's going to be a lot in Project 2025 that they're not going to agree with. But if a person is for small government, checks and balances, upholding constitutional principles, and has more of a conservative ideology, they are going to see a lot within Project 2025 that they're going to agree with. So
I think Rodney Smith says we don't need any more false excitement, brethren. I think there's a lot of false excitement behind Project 2025. We need to kind of shy away from a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the counsel that I would give is the counsel that I would give when it comes to criticism of Ellen White or the Bible, for that matter. If somebody's going to criticize it, would you read the writings of a critic about the Bible, or would you want to go to the Bible itself?
Go to the source.
Go to the source. And the same with writings of Ellen White, a lot of critics of it. Are you going to read all of the articles by the critics, or are you going to go to Ellen White's writings themselves? So Project 2025, anybody could go to that page. They could read the entire document. There's nothing hidden there, and they could see what it is they agree with and what it is they disagree with. But like I said, much that you'll find if you do a quick search, a lot of it, what you'll find is from, you know, those who are more left-leaning than right-leaning. And so you'll find a lot of criticism against Project 2025 from those on the left. And, you know, even Ronald Reagan used certain aspects of ideas that came from the Heritage Foundation. So he also used some of those ideas. So basically, a person who is on the left is who's going to raise alarm about that. But I would counsel people, look at the document itself and see what it says and see what you agree with. Ben Carson wrote a chapter in there. See if you agree with it. See if what he's saying makes sense. And I think that's probably the best thing to do. See it for yourself, read it, see what you think of it.
I
And
agree.
generally, I'd say that about, the Bible or about anything, right? You want to go to the source, see what it actually says. So here we see that also here, in continuing with this article from Liberty Magazine, this is followed by a few sentences on why a regular day off is beneficial, and then the proposal that Congress should encourage communal rest by amending the Fair Labor Standards Act to require that workers be paid time and a half for worked on the Sabbath. So they should be paid more money for working on the Sabbath. So even in this article, we're not reading about the government penalizing the worker. We're not reading about the government penalizing the person for working on Sunday, but we're reading actually that it's the employer that should pay them time and a half. So some people might say, I'm going to work on Sunday. I'm going to make more money. I'm encouraged to work on Sunday because I'll get more money. So it's not at all like the historical Sunday law that we spoke about, where people are penalized for working on Sunday. Even the article admits that. But it continues here to say, here we glimpse a key assumption behind Project 2025, that America is first and foremost for those who embrace not just Christianity, but the particular type of Christianity that prioritizes Sunday rest. We probably shouldn't be surprised by this assertion. Some on the religious right have signaled this or said it outright for decades. So and Spectrum also did an article, and obviously, Spectrum is a highly progressive.
Interesting. Coming from Spectrum, of all people. Yeah.
Yeah, and they pretty much quoted from the Liberty magazine article as well. But this is actually what, and anybody could go on the Project 2025 website. So this is actually what the document says. Sabbath rest. God ordained the Sabbath as a day of rest, and until very recently, Judeo-Christian tradition sought to honor that mandate by moral and legal regulation of work on that day. Moreover, a shared day makes it possible for families and communities to enjoy time together rather than as atomized individuals, and provides a healthier canvas for life for everyone. Unfortunately, that communal day of rest has eroded under the pressures of consumerism and secularism, especially for low-income workers. Congress should encourage communal rest by amending the Fair Labor Standards Act to require that workers be paid time and a half for hours worked on the Sabbath. That day would default to Sunday except for employers. So this is dealing with employers, except for employers with a sincere religious observance of a Sabbath at a different time. Example, Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. The obligation would transfer to that period instead.
Okay.
Houses of worship, to the limited extent they may have FLSA covered employees, and employers legally required to operate around the clock, such as hospitals and first responders, would be exempt, as would workers otherwise exempt from overtime. So you see what it's saying there? If the employer, so this is geared toward the employer.
Yeah. Not the employees so much. So
No.
I wonder if so there's a small window here for Sabbath keepers, Saturday Sabbath keepers. Well, Sunday is not the Sabbath, so we don't even want to call it. But anyway, but it still doesn't really do justice, because you don't know how that could be used. That could be used against them. But again, even when you look at history too, when Constantine passed the first national Sunday law in, was it 331?
321.
321 AD, there was a little loophole for farmers and stuff like that, that they don't have to keep. We are told that they didn't have to think of Sunday as a holy day.
Yes.
So, but eventually, when the Catholic Church took power in 538 AD, under Justinian, all Sabbath keepers began to be called Judaizers. So it went from tolerance to total intolerance of Sabbath keeping. So there is the teeth that is to come but oftentimes it starts with being we open to every other person's views, but we are told Ellen White says there's going to be a time every Sunday keeping must be strictly enforced. So there's going to be no tolerance no matter how we feel about it. So even though I have my issue with Project 2025, it might look good on surface for now, but we do know this is going to turn around and bite us in the end. So that's what it looks like.
Well, and at the same time, you can see from this that so if it's the employer. So when Ellen White's son got arrested for working on Sunday, and the examples that were given earlier in the article from Liberty Magazine of people being arrested for breaking Sunday, that's not at all what we're reading about here. This is not targeting the employee, but it's saying that the employer should pay more money. If the employer is a Sabbath keeper, pay more money for those who work on Sabbath. If they're a whatever day keeper, pay more money for whatever day, Friday or whatever, I don't know, whatever other day. If they're Sunday keeper, they pay more money. But like I said, some people may say, I'm going to work then. I'm encouraged to work now on Sunday. I'm encouraged to work because I'll make more money. But
Yeah.
so
You might do the exact opposite, but it seems like this is more for the people who works in the healthcare system, so that
yeah, they would be exempt, so they wouldn't have to pay more.
Got it. Wow.
Yeah, so if you're in a church or you're in something else, but I think it's important to continue reading here because a lot of people don't consider this is also. Remember, these are just suggestions. So this is just an idea, but here's the alternative view. While some conservatives believe that the government should encourage certain religious observance by making it more expensive for who? For employers and consumers not to partake in those observances, other conservatives believe that the government's role is to protect the free exercise of religion by eliminating barriers as opposed to erecting them, whereas imposing overtime rules on the Sabbath would lead to higher costs and limited access to goods and services and reduce work available on Sabbath, while also incentivizing some people through higher wages to desire to work on the Sabbath. The proper role of government in helping to enable individuals to practice their religion is to reduce barriers to work options and to fruitful employer-employee relations. So it's not saying this view is better than that view. It's just presenting two different views, but neither of those views is really penalizing people for worshiping on Sabbath. Now, again, I'm not saying that people can't take some of these precedents and do something else. But all I'm saying is this itself is not a Sunday law in terms of how we think of it.
No, it's more within the context of employer and employees. So, but again, it's pretty much echoing some of the perspective in the blue laws which you mentioned about earlier today. So it's kind of like drawing back from that. But also, like, all these movements are oftentimes connected to economics, labor forces, and everything. And then eventually they take on a religious form. So although I cannot say for certain this is a National Sunday law, but it's echoing some of that, at least in writings. But again, we still gonna need a serious enough crisis for even that to be considered a thing. Yes, that could be implemented, but they're looking at Sunday as their Sabbath. They got the wrong day, but they still have a level of tolerance, some clause for the people who do not have the same conviction as they do, which in part I appreciate, but I could still see some serious deception hidden here as well.
Yeah, and I also think it's interesting because the argument, if you look at that highlighted part there, it's interesting because it says other conservatives believe that the government's role is to protect the free exercise of religion by eliminating barriers as opposed to erecting them. So in the views of the author who wrote this, they actually view this as protecting religious liberty. So they view making the employer pay time and a half as protecting the religious liberty of the employee who may be a Sunday keeper or who may be a Sabbath keeper, so that they could worship. So they actually, it's interesting because they're not viewing this as taking away religious liberty. They're viewing it as helping people who want to keep whatever Sabbath or whatever idea of Sabbath they have.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. That makes sense.
Yeah. So again, not defending it, but it is interesting that we see this, fear surrounding this idea. But I think when we read it itself, not saying that I'm endorsing this by any means, but really that alternative view is really, as far as I could see, it's pretty much keep things the way they are.
Yeah.
I don't see anything in that alternative view. So it's basically two views presented. Both views are being used to say we're protecting religious liberty. Now, a person could argue, well, you're making the employer pay more money. So that doesn't seem right. But obviously, if the employer is really a Sunday keeper, they would say, well, if you're a keeper of Sunday, you should be keeping Sunday yourself. But
Yeah.
anyway.
But I think part of the reason for this is similar to, like, the tariff, right? You place a level of tax on a particular good, and then the people who's selling it or the country that's selling it will come to the table and negotiate. So that's kind of the goal. But I think this is kind of what this is doing. This is not so much, I want you to give more money to the Sunday keeping person or Sabbath keeping persons. It's more pushing the employers to say, we're going to close our doors on Sunday because we will not give any more money. You know what I'm saying? So it's more like, it's kind of like putting the knee on the neck of the employers, and if I may use that term for lack of word, like, yeah. So if you don't go along with this, therefore it's going to cost you. Most employer will say, no, I refuse to pay extra. How about we just close the door? He's like,
Right.
there you go. That's what we wanted you to do in the first place. So that's kind of like the reaction that they're kind of hoping to get from the employers as well.
Yes, that's right. That is what it is. Okay, so here we see now on the Project 2025 document, continuing there, the result, ample job options that do not require work on the Sabbath, so that individuals in roles that sometimes do require Sabbath work are empowered to negotiate directly with their employer to achieve their desired schedule. So it's basically, the intent is to protect the employers or the employee. It's to protect the employee's ability to keep whatever Sabbath they want to keep. That's basically what we're seeing there.